is that the appearance of the flower and seed at once represents the law of cause and effect. What Buddhism is saying is that every single action that we make in thought, word, or deed is a cause. And that the moment that cause is made, the effect is immediately built into one's life. So the effect may not appear until much later, when the circumstances and conditions are right for it. But nevertheless, it is actually built into one's life. So, to give an all too simple example, if you go skiing when you're 15 or 19, and you damage your ankle in some way, and you don't have it properly attended to, or the doctors make a bungle of it, it may give you no trouble whatsoever, perhaps for 40 years. But as one's beginning to enter old age, then you find yourself getting rheumatism or arthritis beginning it or whatever. And that's a very simple example of something that can be extremely subtle. So what Buddhism is saying is that every moment of life you are making causes. Therefore, every moment of life you're creating effects which for a time are latent and then will appear in your life in one way or another. And the effect is always exactly related to the cause, so far as its value or non-value, anti-value is concerned. You make a great, noble and pure cause, and always the effect in one's own life when it appears will be great, noble and pure. But if you make a bad cause, a cause, say, of hurting somebody, then the effect when it appears in your own life will be a similar form of hurt. So what Buddhism is teaching is that this law of cause and effect is absolutely inescapable. You can't escape it. In the old early days of Buddhism, they described it in a sort of legendary manner as being like two small gods who sat on your shoulders. And one was recording the causes, and the other was making sure the effects were equivalent. But this is how this works. So, of course, once your eyes are open to this, again, you can see it working in one's own life. One can clearly, looking back over one's life, see where you've made a cause and it's produced an effect which is exactly relative to it. So then one gradually becomes adjusted to the realization that this is happening not just once a week, but every single moment. So every single moment of one's life, one is reacting to an effect which in its turn becomes a cause. So destiny or karma is the chain of that, cause and effect. So of course, if one's basic state of life is, say, anger, then that tendency to be angry is revealed in causes which has effects, and the effects being such that they perpetuate that anger in a chain, not only through one lifetime, but through many lifetimes. Because Buddhism also points out that the entity of life, even though it may go into its state of latency, still will be carrying with it the pattern of cause and effect through until its next life, eternally. So therefore, when one comes back to the practice of Buddhism, again, the purpose of that practice is to give one the power to sustain making good, great, pure causes. So through making good, great, pure causes, through the practice of Buddhism and sustaining that day in and day out, you are gradually overcoming or lightening the bad karma that you may have created in the past through making bad causes. So this is, I think, one of the greatest points of the Buddhist philosophy. Not only is the philosophy itself incredibly deep and wide and rounded and all-embracing, but also you are given a practice that gives you the power to sustain living that philosophy. The world's been full of many philosophies, but how many of those philosophies have given human beings a practice to actually live it, not just today and tomorrow, not just as an all-night wonder, not just as a craze for 6 months, but for year after year after year, for a lifetime and more. This is truly the amazing thing about Buddhism. So you can see now that Myoho and Renge express the rhythm of life in its two different main facets. One being the cycle of manifestation and latency, and the other being, if you like, running through it like a shuttle in a weaving machine, the law of cause and effect. So this is incredible in a way. In a way it seems simple, yet in a way it's unbelievably complex and complicated, isn't it? When one tries to imagine the pattern of all those causes and effects, every minute of every living thing's life, running through this cycle of manifestation and latency, or birth and death as we know it. Now the last word is kyo. Nam, devotion, myoho, to this incredible rhythm or behavior of universal life. Renge, including at its foundation the law of cause and effect, and kyo. Kyo meaning literally sound, or sutra, teaching, communication, or even in modern terms, vibration. So what Buddhism is saying is that everything in the entire universe is linked rhythmically through sound, through kyo. In other words, neither man, woman, nor any living thing is independent of every single other living thing in the entire universe. What I do at this moment is not just affecting you all, and me of course, not just affecting Friend's house, which we're doing this lecture in, but affecting the entire universe. This is an incredible thought, isn't it? In other words, the ripple of the actions of every living thing is felt by everything else. So Buddhism describes this by a great principle, which is known in Japanese as Esho Funi, the inseparability of man and his environment. Whatever action, and that includes both spiritual and physical, a person makes, it's immediately reflected into everything in that person's environment. And since every environment overlaps with many other environments, therefore that effect is felt in those environments as well. And this goes on and on, outwards, 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 far into the boundless universe. So of course, if only people, especially in the West maybe, had truly understood this principle, I don't think today there would be the incredible pollution and destruction of the environment which we see in so many parts. Maybe there would, because greed was perhaps stronger. But the fact is that this has occurred because no human being really understood this principle of Eshofuni, of the absolute inseparability of oneself and the environment we exist in. So this environment reflects, and of course reflects in return on oneself. So supposing one's in the state of anger, you go into a schoolroom or an office or back home to your family, and even without saying one word, that anger radiates into that environment. An angry person walking into a room, everybody can feel it without him saying anything, and as a matter of fact, without even looking at him. Of course, it's true that anger reflects in red cheeks and glaring eyes, perhaps. But even without looking at a person, you can feel anger in a room. Same applies to hell. If someone's in hell, they have a tendency to drag everybody else into hell as well, if they could possibly do so. You feel that pull of that miserable frustration. And of course the same applies to Buddha. This is the important point. Just the same as you can precipitate others into hell or anger, you can also precipitate others into the state of Buddha. Therefore, if Buddha more and more becomes the main tendency of one's own life, one's environment will react quite naturally accordingly. One's Buddha state in everything that surrounds one begins to react to one's own Buddha state, and vice versa. So Buddhism is teaching that the most important thing for human happiness is to elevate one's state of life so that one's environment reacts in that same elevated state. And of course this is why when people practice, they discover that they're getting benefits. So it may seem almost like a miracle, almost sort of magical. Why is it that before I started chanting, I went to my bank manager 100 times and never would he give me a loan? Yet this month, after a month, chanting Nam-myoho-renge-kyo, I go to him and he gives me it. I mean, it's an absurdly small example, but to some people it's an incredibly important one. Why is it? Because previously something in that person's life was really antagonizing or upsetting the bank manager. However just his cause for a loan, he never got it. But when that person has elevated his highest state of life, that reflects also in the behavior in the bank manager, and his boss for that matter, and his wife, and everybody else. So this, of course, principle, which is so fundamental to Buddhism, one soon can begin to prove for one's own sake. So the chanting of Nam-myoho-renge-kyo therefore is fundamental not only to one's own happiness, but also for the happiness of your environment. Therefore one can say that even one person chanting Nam-myoho-renge-kyo is beneficially affecting not only his own life, but certainly the life of his friends, his relations, his family, and actually the entire planet called Earth, and on out into the universe itself. So what I say today at this lecture is Kyo. It's affecting your lives, whether nicely or nastily, I don't know. But nevertheless, it's affecting you. My environment is overlapping all of yours. Equally, each of your environments is overlapping each other. So the ripples of what I say go outwards to you, and then who knows how far outwards into each of your environments. Maybe when you get down to breakfast tomorrow morning, you say to your wife or something rather, my goodness, that old fool was saying some stupid things last night, in which case the riffles aren't terribly good. But if you say, oh, that was really interesting, and he said this and this and this, and the wife can say, oh, really, that's rather interesting. And then she tells her friend, this is how the riffles go ever outwards. So that is, if you like, the workings of Nam-myoho-renge-kyo. And just before we close, I think I should mention the actual practice of it. So what Nichiren Daishonin said was that we should chant Nam-myoho-renge-kyo to our heart's content. So this means being very honest with oneself. I once heard the president of our lay society say there is absolutely no point in one member boasting to another member how much Daimoku or Nam-myoho-renge-kyos they chant. Because one person's life is totally different to another person's life. So Nichiren Daishonin said, you should chant to your heart's content. And the truth is that if you're really honest with yourself, you'll feel, I really should chant more today. Or to overcome that problem, I know I need to chant more. Or equally, if you're all tensed and worked up and you're honest with yourself again, you can feel, no, that's enough, for today. But it means being honest with yourself and, as it were, checking yourself and making sure that you're really sincerely looking at your life and judging it calmly. But this is what Nichiren Daishonin said. In another Gosho he said, there are times when one Daimoku is enough, and there are times when 10,000 Daimoku is not enough. In another Gosho he said, I have just chanted one Daimoku to help her to overcome her sickness. So of course, in that one Daimoku, he will have put his whole life. But sometimes when we're feeling lazy or miserable or upset, certainly we're not putting our whole life into every Daimoku. Anyway, not at the beginning of our practice. Therefore, Nichiren Daishonin said you should chant it over and over again to your heart's content. It depends entirely your nature, your character, the type of problem that you desire to overcome, your needs, the heaviness or the lightness of your karma, as we call it, or destiny, how much each person should chant. Though, as a general guide to people, it's usually said that if you really wish to keep the life force flowing in you, like a stream of water throughout your lifetime, round about 3,000 Daimoku a day is always adequate. So the truth is that some people will go for many days, even weeks, chanting much less than that. Others will feel the desire to chant much more than that. In the end, what matters is the results, isn't it? What you can show for the effort you make. And always, if you're honest with yourself, you can judge whether you should do more or whether you can do a little less. But being human beings, with the negative state of life working in us, it's a good principle to do a bit more than perhaps sometimes you feel you like to. This is the effort, isn't it, of Nam. So, through sitting up straight, with one's eyes open, not closed, Nam-myoho-renge-kyo is not inward going only. It's not introspective only, though it includes introspection. You should sit up straight with your eyes open. And of course, in due course, you receive the object of devotion, which we call the Gohonzon, which is a scroll with Chinese characters on it, subject of another lecture. You can fix your eyes on that and chant Nam-myoho-renge-kyo. If you have no Causton yet, it's best to choose a blank wall or the sky or whatever you like that is not going to mesmerize you or upset you, like looking at a turnip on a bit of wallpaper all the time. It could be disturbing. But just something blank to concentrate your mind and your life as you chant those words. So of course it's very strange. It's not just strange to us in the West. Sometimes we say, oh, this must be easy for the Japanese or the Chinese, but it's very difficult to us. It's just as strange for them. Sitting up straight, with one's eyes open, chanting words about which we understand very, very little. How can this possibly mean anything? Yet the truth of it is that once we begin to even chant once or twice or 3 times, seriously concentrating our minds on the sound and those words, somehow we feel something profound about it. And of course, this is because it's awakening the Buddha state in our lives. The Buddha state in each one of our lives fully responds to Nam-myoho-renge-kyo. So, of course, you can say, this is very mystic, but think how one's life responds to other sounds. Often very deeply and very profoundly also. Sound of music in its various forms, noisy sounds, harsh sounds, the singing of birds, rude sounds, all have, don't they, the deepest effect on our lives. What is being affected? The various states of life which I went through at the beginning. Amongst those various states is Buddhahood. Therefore, if you chant Nam-myoho-renge-kyo, which is the life or the force of Buddha, the force of life itself, of course the reaction in you is profound.